Hi, I'm Cameron with Spartan Tool, and today we're going to go over installing a cable in a Model 81 machine. First thing we want to do is set the machine on its back, just like so. The next thing we need to do is open up this drum. So it has these 3/8 inch acorn nuts. We'll loosen all of these up and take them off. I like to just set them in the drum and the little divot it has as I'm taking them off. All right, now the next thing we need to do is get this drum open. I like to use a flathead screwdriver, just position myself underneath and kind of pry up gently to break that seal. Sometimes it can be very stuck in place. I carefully take the front cone off and then save and set all of these aside gently so that I do not lose anything. Now, underneath here, we have a couple different seals and rings going on. So there's two rubber seals and then there's a steel spacer. With 5/16 cable, we would just leave this in place. But since we're installing 1/4 inch cable, we need to take this steel spacer off and set it aside to be installed on the outside of this front cone. What the steel spacer does is it sets the distance between the front cone and this cone here. So a larger distance is better for a larger cable because it lets it go in and lets it fit through, but you want a closer distance for a 1/4 inch cable, which is a smaller cable, so that that cable cannot flip over and go the wrong direction inside the drum. So we'll simply put both of these spacers back down under, both of these rubber seals back down underneath. And then we need to locate our cable clamp. So this is the cable clamp inside of that drum. Now we're going to grab that cable clamp and loosen it up. The wrench. It uses a 1/2 inch wrench. As you loosen that up, you'll see it starts moving around. And then we can simply push up on the bolt to open up that clamp without taking it all the way out. The next thing we need to do is grab that front of that drum and push the cable through the cone of the drum first. Pull some cable through so we can set this aside. Now we have our cable through the cone in our hands. Then we'll push this through. We'll position that cable on what would be the right side of that clamp if you're looking at it, and we're going to push the cable in counterclockwise so that the cable winds in clockwise as it's going through that drum. So give it a little push. Any exposed cable past that clamp is acceptable. We just want to see a little bit cable going past. Tighten that back up, and we'll snug this up. Now, before we put that front cone on, I like to lubricate this inner cone and the outer cone here. So essentially the cable is just sliding against this as it's being fed into the machine, and it's sliding against this as it's being fed out. So get yourself something to lubricate that, and I just spray it around and do the same with the inner cone. Place. Now, once again, because we're using 1/4 inch cable, we're going to install the steel spacer on the outside. If this was 5/16, that steel spacer would be underneath. Now, holding a little bit of tension on the front of the drum so it doesn't pop open, I like to get a couple of these acorn nuts and washers started so that it holds this down. And now we can get the rest of them started. I like to always start these by hand. Make sure we keep the threads on these little studs in good shape, and to help prevent cross-threading. Now that we have all of those installed, we're tightening them down. Now it's really important that we tighten them down by hand with a little wrench, and we're just going to gently snug them down. As we tighten these down, there's those 2 rubber seals underneath. It's going to start squishing those seals and seal up this drum. If we use an impact or we over tighten these, it will squeeze out the seals and can potentially cause leaking. If we continue to tighten it down, we can pop the top of the acorn nut off as that stud reaches that top and pops the cap off, and then the acorn nut will not protect the threads. And then the last thing that'll happen, if we continue to keep tightening down after that, we can actually rip the stud off of the drum. So we're just going to snug this down by hand with a little wrench. And I like to install it in kind of a star pattern just to make sure it evenly tightens up as we're going. And then the last thing we need to do is shove the cable inside the drum. Now, as we put this cable inside the drum, I like to make sure that I'm grabbing it close to the front of the drum. If I grab this from too far away and I give it a push, if it gets caught, it can potentially bend like so. And I have seen people kink a brand new cable installing a cable in the drum. And that's how you install a cable in a Model 81 machine.